In 2015, 270 scientists spent 3 years quietly checking their own field's homework. They took 100 famous psychology studies, the kind that end up in textbooks, and they ran them again. 97% of the originals had found something. 36% of the repeats did. Almost nobody outside psychology noticed. Willpower is a fuel tank that runs down through the day. 23 labs tested it together. The effect was close to zero. Stand like a superhero for 2 minutes and your hormones change. The study's own first author now says publicly that she does not believe it and has asked people to stop citing her. Ordinary students turned into monsters in a fake prison at Stanford. Someone found the tapes. The guards were caged. One was told directly to be tougher. 8 healthy people walked into psychiatric hospitals and nobody could tell they were sane. A journalist found the researchers' private notes. Most of the participants can't be verified at all. One volunteer's real data was left out because it didn't fit. Every one of those is in a textbook. Every one of those is broken. So what happened? Nobody faked most of these. That's the uncomfortable part. Here's how it works. You run a study. You measure 15 things. 14 show nothing. One shows something. Which one do you write up? The one that shows something. Not because you're a liar, because that's the one that's interesting. And interesting is what gets published. And published is what gets you a job. Do that across a whole field for 50 years. And you build a library of the flukes. In 2009, some researchers made this impossible to ignore. They put the dead salmon in a brain scanner. They showed it photographs of people and asked it to judge what those people were feeling. The dead fish showed brain activity. 16 active regions. The salmon wasn't the point. The point was that if you run thousands of tests at once and don't correct for it, you will find signal in a corpse. At the time, up to 40% of brain imaging papers weren't correcting. 3 years later, 10% were still not. The fish worked. And this isn't a psychology disease. In 1909, Millikan measured the charge of an electron and got it slightly wrong because he used the wrong figure for the viscosity of air. Look at what happened next. Every measurement after his came out a little higher, then a little higher than that, creeping up over years towards the real number. Nobody jumped straight to it. The results that disagreed most with Millikan got thrown out as errors. Those were the correct ones. Physics did exactly what psychology did. It just did it quieter. Now here's the part that cost something. Amy Cody's power posing talk has tens of millions of views. It is one of the most watched talks in the world. And in 2016, Donna Carney, the study's first author, published a statement saying she no longer believes the effect is real and asked people to stop citing the paper. She burned her own most famous finding in public on purpose. Ask yourself how many people you know who would do that. The marshmallow test told us that a 4-year-old who waits for a second sweet will do better at everything for life. Then researchers ran it again with 10 times more children and accounted for the family's income. The effect mostly vanished. It was never measuring self control, it was measuring whether a child had any reason to believe an adult's promise. Think about what we did with that. We took a study that was quietly about poverty and we turned it into a story about character. So, is any of it real? Yes, quite a lot of it. Read the word red printed in blue ink and try to say the color instead of the word. You will stumble. That's Stroop from 1935, and it works on everyone, every time, 90 years later. Space your learning out instead of cramming and you remember more. In 2015, someone repeated Ebbinghaus's experiment from 1885, 70 hours of it, and got his curve back almost exactly. Here a random number before you guess a price, and your guess moves towards it. Kahneman and Tversky replicated hundreds of times. And here's my favorite one. There's a famous idea that correcting someone's false belief makes them believe it harder. The backfire effect. Everyone in media knows it. It's the reason a lot of people quietly gave up on facts. Then researchers ran it again with over 10,000 people across dozens of the ugliest issues we have. Backfires were rare. Corrections mostly moved people towards the truth. The finding that said people can't be reasoned with could not survive being checked. So, what do you do with all this? Not cynicism. That's the lazy read, and it's wrong. A field that finds out a third of its results don't hold and publishes that loudly in its own biggest journals is not a field that's broken. It's the only kind of field that works. Nobody made psychology do this. There was no scandal, no court case, no whistleblower. 270 scientists just decided to check, knowing exactly what they might find and knowing it would be their own names on it. 36% isn't the scandal. The scandal would have been not looking.